All right, we are live. That was weird. Ah, world. The Breath Club Q&A. So this is where if you're in the Breath Club, you get to ask me certain questions. So there's different tiers, but the Breath Club it's basically a place for people who are really into breath work and if you sort of want to experiment with me and be in my laboratory. So today we're going to get to some pretty amazing questions. If you're not already a member of the Breath Club, that is our Breath Club on Patreon. So you can go to Patreon/Midwestern Method. And it's in the description box here as well. You can just copy and paste that in there. What we do is this whole thing started 6 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long, when everyone had to cancel their live breathwork sessions. Remember what was going on 6 years ago? Man, we've been through it, my friends. But we got through it. Anyway, at the time, as a aspiring career in the breathwork career, and I was cancel all of my sessions. I had to cancel all my workshops, all my sessions, all my retreats. And so that's where the Breath Club started, and it just hasn't stopped. There's over 100 sessions in there. And so what I'm doing now actually is remastering, or I'm returning to some of my older work. So if you have been in the Breath Club and you like some of my previous work, or if you've discovered some of my stuff on the Breath, we're doing 2.0. So last month we did Falling Timbers 2.0, which was an epic session the first time. And then I just use all my 6 years of experience and creative juices and added to it. Came out with the Falling Timbers 2.0 this time. This month we're working on Sam's Ladder. So Sam was a member in our Breath Club. Actually, I haven't heard from Sam in a while. Sam, are you out there? Let me know, because what we're doing this month is we are returning to Sam's Ladder, and we're going to be using Sam's Ladder as a challenge for next month. Sam's Ladder is a session that is basically, it's a breath challenge. I don't think I've released it for free anywhere, the original. And so the original, yeah, there you are, John. Hey, good to see you, John. The original Sam's Ladder, I've been reviewing it. My son was in the room. We took a look, and basically we get slower and slower and slower and slower in our breathing. Eventually you're breathing 3 breaths per minute. We might take it a step further on the remaster. We may take it to the next step. We may take it all the way to 2 breaths per minute. Ooh, can you do it? Well, whenever you do Sam's Ladder, the beauty behind it is that we get slower and slower and slower progressively. And there is science behind how fast you should change your breathing technique if you really want to get the most out of the autonomic nervous system, out of all the changes that happen whenever you're doing techniques. There's science behind it. And so we use the science. But here it is, guys. We're in 2026, and I'm kind of sick of, on the one hand, I love the science. I live for the science. I have a science show here on the Breathwork channel. But why are we even doing this stuff? Is it just so we can move numbers, or is it so that we can move our life, right? Is it so that we can be moved? So really there's the science to it, but there's also this huge thing, which is the humanity of it. And I think sometimes it gets oversimplified into just vibes, where it's just like, it's just vibes on the internet, where they completely forget the science, or they'll make non-scientific, just ridiculous claims. And then there's the other extreme where it's like, let's just focus on science. And so if you're into both, if you feel like there needs to be a balance, then hey, join us in the Breath Club. Take a look at my stuff on the Breathwork channel. That's what we're here for. Today, we're getting into some really amazing questions. We've got a question about, so I have one of our members asked about his daughter's baseball. His daughter is a pitcher, and she's doing some high school baseball, and he wants to know what techniques he can use to help her, or what techniques she can use to help stay calm whenever she's playing. We got a really cool question about box breathing versus 4-7-8. Why is it that box breathing keeps us sort of more alert versus whenever we're doing 4-7-8? Why is it that that seems to make us calmer and more relaxed? And then we have another question about healing and breath work. How does all that work? So we got a lot of cool things to talk about today. Last few things I just want to bring up before we get into the Q&A is that one, if you are a first responder, if you're a police, firefighter, any frontline worker, dispatcher, well, of course, I always want to remember the dispatchers because so many people forget the dispatchers. So many people forget the person who actually answered the phone when you called 911. And they remember the people who showed up, but they always forget the person who answered the phone. So we want to remember the dispatchers always. If you are in any of the first responder communities, we just published a white paper on breathworktactics.com. So this is a white paper that is basically the scientific rationale for the work that I do with first responders in the Breathwork Tactics program. We do a program called Mission Reset, and I'm working with a resilience master trainer, an FBI resilience master trainer. So, and when we are doing these Mission Reset programs for first responders, we're even offering certifications in these things as well. So if you'd like to see some of the science, we just published a white paper that is myself and the co-founder. And the funny thing is this particular white paper came out just a couple days ago, but it's based off of the research that I did back in 2022. And it's so funny when I was publishing this, I would say 80% of the white paper we just published was originally used back in 2022 when we were getting breathwork tactics into the Indianapolis Police Academy. So it's really important, I believe, that especially people who are working under extreme stress on a regular basis, they learn these techniques, right? They learn these skills. And so we have a program called Breathwork Tactics. It's specifically for first responders. It is not a bunch of breath workers trying to go tell first responders how to breathe, though. I am the only non-first responder in the organization. And the only reason I'm invited is just because I brought the breath work. Okay. So, hey, Moose Man, good to see you. So I'm the person who I wrote the book, A Practical Guide to Breath Work. And then we had a sheriff reach out to me and he said, hey, we need this in policing. We need this in first responders. And then he and I created this. So it was like, and I said, listen, I have no idea what your life is. I'm very open to learning about it. And so I was really fortunate to get to go train with him and get a huge deep dive into the police academy, what goes into training new police officers. And I've been very fortunate to work in that sort of realm for quite some, actually since 2022. Actually, it's 2021. Oh my gosh. All right. So that's 5 years deep. Anyway, 2022 is when we wrote the initial rationale. And this is back whenever I was still an English professor. So you can read, when you're reading this, I want you to think about, okay, this is actually back before you could use AI to help you do research. This is back when I was using databases. Nowadays, you know, it's a lot easier to do research because, hey, just find me a bunch of sources that are on this topic, which I have a big problem with, by the way, when it comes to research. If you're just finding, and this is the thing when I was an English professor, if you only find sources that back up your position, it's called supporting your own bias, right? So that is not research. That is just supporting your own biases, right? There is a good, you with AI, just make sure you're prompting the right way and you're fine. But this is back before. This is back whenever I was using all these databases, and I went full on English professor on this rationale. And the funny thing is, I was an English professor, right? So I taught research, rhetoric, all those things. And if you're a super nerd, you might know MLA format is what I used to teach because that's what all humanities teachers teach. And then so I had to switch it all to APA format. That was a big move for me. Anyway, enough nerding out. I don't know. This might be a nerd crew. You let me know. Anyway, that white paper is now available at breathworktactics.com. You can check it out. And we have a thing where you can cite it. So it's now citable, and it's linked to the internet in a way that you can cite it. It's a permalink. It's not going anywhere. So you can cite it and you can know, hey, look, this is what they found after 5 years of doing this program. Here is the science that they use to justify what they do. This is what they're doing, and this is the results they're getting. So it's really, really exciting stuff. I'm just really excited to share with you guys. So anyway, that is out there now. And then what is, let's see, I think that might be all of the news. The last bit of news, if you are an aspiring breath worker, or if you're a breath worker, or if you're a person who, there's sadly enough, there's no accrediting body that's trustworthy in the world of breath work yet. So you might just say, hey, I'm a breath worker, or I'm a breath coach. If that is you, whether you've certified with a reputable source or not, I highly recommend reading my new book, Becoming the Ethical Breath Worker. You can find it on jessecoomer.com. You can also find it on Amazon. This is an invitation. It is not a rule book, okay? A lot of people think that ethics is just a bunch of rules. That is the opposite of what ethics actually are. That's where we get rules from, right? But ethics are essentially ways of thinking, ways of approaching things, so that when you get to the areas of life where there are no rules, where it's like, oh, wow, this is a gray area, so that you have a scaffolding to fall back on. That's what ethics are all about, right? And so Becoming the Ethical Breath Worker is a book that I wrote that I wish someone had written before me. But hey, this is the book that I wish I would have had to lay out some of the things that you should expect to have to come into contact with, and help you to have 5 specific skills that give you something to go on whenever the random things happen, and they will happen. They're going to happen all the time. Plus, you are going to make mistakes. What do you do when you make those mistakes? How do you approach those? What's the ethical path from there? So I'm not claiming to, come off of a mountain with, stone tablets or anything like that, is saying, hey, you have to do it this way. But I am saying, I wish somebody would have given me some kind of scaffolding as I came into this field 10, 11 years ago now. So that is out there now. So, oh yes, Moose Man. Yes, exactly. Sam's Ladder is coming back. And I've got to say, the soundtrack that I've got now is insane. So it is so good right now. And so, yeah, I've gotten better. I've got, in the past 6 years, I've gotten better at creating this content. I've gotten better at music curation. I've gotten better at all this stuff. So it's going to be a big upgrade. And we're going to use it next month in the Breath Tribe as a challenge to see if we can really focus on that breath. A lot of amazing things happening in the Patreon club. And here's the thing. Sometimes if you're in the Patreon club, you feel like nothing's going on. And other times it's like a lot of things are going on. Right now, there's a lot of things going on in the background. Okay. So a lot of things going on in the background. Get ready for an amazing, especially as the holidays come. We like to have a lot of fun in the holidays. So October, November, December, get ready. Get ready, my friends, because we're going to have some fun. All right. So having said all that, I actually have my list here. And, that's the funny thing. I should, with all the tech that we have, I'm still the type of person, I like to write stuff down. Let's see, here it is. I'm still got pencils. I still draw. Anyway, the low tech stuff, I think is we don't want to lose it. So let's actually get into some questions now. All right. So our first question comes to us. Let's see here. It is Justin. He was asking about what is the best technique for my daughter. She's a pitcher. She plays high school baseball. Okay, so this is one of those things where we often get questions about sports, especially specific sports. And you have to think about this, whether you're a breath coach, whether you're a breath worker, or whether you're just an enthusiast, you want to think about this. What is it that I'm doing, and how is my respiration already interfacing with that action? Okay, so what's already happening? We don't want to say, hey, this is the key, until we say what's actually happening right now. Okay, so one of the biggest, I would say the biggest group of people that I get when it comes to athletes are kickers, pitchers, and other people that are just like I would say like a goalie. Like basically it's those people that you only have like 5 seconds of play, right? But they're everyone's talking about it, right? Right. And when it comes to high school athletes, I haven't trained a whole lot of high school. Well, I guess I have in my career. I have trained quite a few high school athletes. but it's the same regardless if you're a pro or semi-pro or whatever you are. It's everyone's watching you, right? And so you can get all the reps in and you can really be practiced, and then you just really feel like you have nothing to give. So what is the best technique? Well, the first thing we want to do is not wait until we're feeling overwhelmed. Okay. And I know that that's typically what happens, right? And that's why a lot of people say, oh, breath work doesn't work. I've tried it. I was freaking out and it didn't make me somehow superhuman. Well, of course not. Do you think that if I would say, hey guys, you're about to storm the beaches of Normandy here, just do box breathing and then you're not going to be freaking out? Well, of course not. You got to train your nervous system along the way. So a lot of it has to do with training the breath as you do your practice. It's just as important as getting the reps in. It's just as important as running laps, physical fitness, all those other things, because what you're doing is you're training your mindset. So I often say, and actually, Sam's Ladder, the first line of, so in case you haven't done much breath work with me, I don't know if you've done breath work with me, you might know this. I tend to have a little bit of a talk, maybe a little snippet, hopefully, of wisdom at the beginning, something to ponder as we're doing the breath work. And in Sam's Ladder, of course, it's all very fresh because I'm working on it right now. I talk about how breath work is focus work, right? So breath work is focus work. That is something that's sort of just like a thing to remember, because if you have an athlete who is serious about it, they should be focusing on the breath as they play. There should also be a daily breath work practice to train the nervous system to be calm, just in general, to be more flexible. Now, how do you do something like that? Well, this is where it does depend on the person. And yes, this is where personalized training is going to take you further than anything else. But let's just suppose you're looking for something really kind of basic. Maybe you want to use the resources here for free on the Breathwork channel, or you want to use some of the resources in the Breath Club. Well, here's what I would recommend doing. Get into a daily practice. If you can find, and this is very difficult to do because of the tech that's required, but if you can find your heart resonance frequency, that would be ideal. But most people can't do that. So what we do instead, I want you to go to the Breathwork channel. And let's see, what is it? There's a video that I did where I give a mathematical formula where you put your height and your sex into the mathematical formula, and it gives you an approximate ideal breathing cadence. And I want you to do that every day. Just practice that ideal breathing cadence every day for 15 minutes before you do any kind of before you go to practice or something like that. Now, that does not mean the end of the 15 minutes is the beginning of your practice. Ideally, it would mean that. It could mean that you can't figure out when to do that. Just do it first thing in the morning. That's fine. Getting into a regular practice of something that's going to build flexibility into your nervous system it's going to change your life. Okay. Not just your game, but it's going to change your life. Okay. So that's the first thing. And that's the most important thing. And then the next thing would be having a pregame ritual. Okay. So pregame rituals are important for many reasons. They're important to just sort of cue the mindset that you're trying to get into, because your brain is looking for cues just in general, right? So am I safe? Am I not safe? Oh, this is familiar. Familiarity is safe. So get into a pregame ritual, including some of your favorite breathing techniques. And this can be everything from sniff, sniff, poo, which is, in my opinion, the best one to do as far as just like a pre-game ritual thing, because it feels good. It helps you to sort of clear your mind, opens up all your alveoli. So it opens the alveoli in your lungs. So you got a better gas exchange in general. So for athletes, they want that. I mean, that's something we all want, but especially if you're about to get into some kind of physical pursuit, that's a good thing. But get one that is something that you like. Okay. It doesn't have to be that one thing. We're about to talk about box breathing and 4-7-8 here in just a little bit. So maybe it's box breathing. Maybe it's 4-7-8. There's no magical one. And to Justin's question here, there's no magical one technique that is like always the best for this. it really has a lot to do with your preference and basically what you want to do. So getting into that. And then one of the worst things that an athlete can do is have that post-game rumination, that the overthinking, And so it's an important thing to think about, what is my post-game ritual? Okay, so, and this is, I think, so important because you're going to make mistakes, or you're going to make errors. You're going to have awesome days too, but how can I sort of rinse off what happened in that game so that I can continue to move forward? Yes, I want to learn from my mistakes. Yes, all those things, but I don't want to get stuck in that feedback loop, that big trap that we often get into, where it's trapping us from doing our best and giving 100%. Because what we can start doing is, and you see this all the time with athletes, you see it in every part of life, really, is we start to try not to lose as opposed to trying to win. These are different things, right? Trying not to lose versus trying to win is a totally different thing. And I'm not going to get into my coaching spiel, but there's a there's a big difference there. And so remembering, okay, yes, I can learn from my mistakes. Yes, I can do those. But what am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing next, as opposed to what did I just do? Okay. So Justin, thank you so much for that question. Thanks for being a member at this higher level tier in the Breath Club. Let's get to the next question. Box breathing versus 4-7-8. And so this question, let's see here. This question came from, where did this question come from? Bear with me a second. I want to give you a shout out. I'm trying to do more shout outs. What I used to do, I used to batch the questions. And what's interesting is that a lot of times the questions will sort of have a theme. And so I would just sort of talk about, we have a few questions on this topic, a few questions on that topic. And that wasn't cool, man. That wasn't cool, because we've got to give credit where credit is due, because there's some really great questions that come in. So bear with me just a second. I forgot to write down the name on this one, and I know it is here. Here it is. Joseph, thank you so much for this question. This question has to do with box breathing and 4-7-8 breathing. And since I already have this up, let's just read directly what this question is. His question is, what is it about box breathing that helps people stay calm but alert, while 4-7-8 breathing leaves people calm but sleepy? Okay. It's a great question. So, so there's a few things let's just kind of talk about. So box breathing, just so we establish what box breathing, most people do box breathing wrong, first of all. So box breathing is an inhale, a hold, exhale, hold, right? They're all even generally. Traditionally, you're going to be doing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Most people do it the wrong way. So that most people close their glottis whenever they're in the holds. You should not be doing that. Traditionally, you're going to just keep the throat or your glottis open and relaxed. And so you're using your inspiratory muscles to maintain that hold as opposed to adding pressure. And so you're going to notice if you've never done this before, actually, I have a free, there's like a 5-day challenge, like 5 techniques in 5 days on the Breathwork channel. One of those days is where I go over this. And I know that it's one of those things. It seems like such a minor thing, and it actually for a lot of people, they find it very difficult to hold with full lungs without closing their throat, right? So try it, and even if you're trying it right now, just try it while we're talking. You're going to notice a difference, right? And so there's box breathing. Okay, so that would be box breathing, and then there is 4-7-8 breathing. Now this is the one that Dr. Andrew Weil made very famous recently. Not recently, I would say within the last 5 or 10 years. He's made it kind of a famous thing. This is where you inhale for 4, you hold for 7 with a closed glottis, right? So we're changing the physiology a little bit. We're holding with pressure. Okay, so it's a different kind of full lung apnea, and then we exhale for 8 seconds. Two different techniques, 2 different outcomes for most people. Having said that, there are many people who do box breathing the correct way even, right? And they still feel, like, oh, now it's time to go to sleep. There are many people who don't feel that sleepy after doing 4-7-8. And in fact, 4-7-8 is not, according to the research, it's not the most effective technique for going to sleep. It is a very effective technique for going to sleep, but it's not the most effective technique. More on that coming soon on the Breathwork channel. So I've just been doing an enormous amount of research on this, and so I just filmed it. The editor is working on it. I don't want to give too much away, but back to the question. So what is the difference? Why is it that there's these two different things? And if you think about it, on the one hand, we know that typically, just as a whole, the slower you breathe, the more parasympathetic dominant you become. Okay, so it's in general, you can say that if you breathe slower, you're going to become calmer, right? And 4-7-8 breathing is slightly faster than box breathing at the typical pace, right? If you think about it, right? So you got 16 seconds per breath. So 4, 4, 4, 4, right? If you 4 times 4. And then on the other hand, now when you look at 4-7-8, let's see, you got 12, let's see, 16, let's see, 12. Oh, actually, I guess I'm wrong. Did I mention that I was a humanities professor, not a math professor? So here's the thing. You've got the speed of breath. So that's one signal. And then you've got the ratio of breath. So that's another signal. And there's some people who, there's some disagreement in the super world, some disagreement. And we're talking about we're talking about splitting hairs, in my opinion. Okay. There's some people who are like, no, the research doesn't show this, but here's what I believe in. And there's research too. The exhale. So whenever you have an extended exhale, you are stimulating your vagus nerve in we could say a stronger way. It's a more powerful stimulation of the vagus nerve, which is part of your parasympathetic nervous system. All that means is that you are telling your nervous system that you're safe. Now, think about what sleep is. Sleep is when you are the most vulnerable, right? If you become unconscious and there's bad guys and there's monsters or, lions and tigers and bears, terrible thing for you, right? That is the opposite of what you want. So you don't want to feel safe and be in the presence of danger, right? And at the same time, you don't want to be going to sleep when you don't feel safe. Okay. So when we look at box breathing, when we look at 4-7-8, one of the biggest reasons why we start to see a difference in the general state that most people feel. And again, everyone's a little bit different. Okay. There is a lot of diversity in our biology, even though the vast majority of what we are is the same, right? So if you look at a human being, it's not like we're that different, but there's a lot of variation within the species. Okay. Within us, we have, there's differences just depending on like the size of certain organs in your body and how much blood you have. And like, there are differences and these subtle differences make big changes, especially when we're looking at breath. So when you have box breathing, we have everything balanced, we have everything equal. That's kind of the goal, right? So this is kind of simplifying it. But if you think about, okay, so if the lengthened exhale is the stronger parasympathetic signal, we've got something here now that is balanced all the way around, right? Mooseman likes the 4-8. Actually, no spoilers. I'm not going to do any spoilers, but that is about 4-7-8, right? 4-7-8 is kind of the same thing, only a long, full lung with closed glottis. And it may very well be that someday there's research that comes out that says 4-7-8 is superior to 4-8 breathing, right? And I'm not saying that that's the one. There's some details that I need to give you in the episode, but you might be onto something there, Mooseman. You might be onto something. But here's the thing. When it comes down to what the structure of these techniques are. So when you think about the structure of a technique, and so I teach people in the Language of Breath school. So all the people that certify with me, I teach them how to create their own techniques, right? So we need to learn, what does an inhale do? What does an exhale do? What is the difference between holding your breath with closed glottis versus open glottis? What are all these things, right? And so we construct these techniques based off of what what the parts generally do, right? It's not like saying that they always do this or they have to do this or your body has. It's not really like that, but generally we can say this is what these parts do. So if you simplify this and just think about this, what you're doing with box breathing, the reason why it's so helpful, especially whenever you need to stay balanced, we're balancing all the parts of the breath. Okay, in, hold. Okay, we're balancing it. We are slowing it down, so it will help you to calm, but we're doing this in a way that is as balanced as we can be with our breath. Okay, this is sort of simplifying it, but I don't think it's oversimplifying it. Then you look at 4-7-8. We are really focusing on enhancing that exhale. So a few things. You're seeing a 4-second inhale. That's not a fast inhale, right? So a fast inhale is a gasp, right? Oh, that's fast, right? 4 seconds in, 2, 3, 4. That is a reasonably slow inhale. That's slower than the average inhale that you take during the day, right? So when we do this, there's a few things that happen. You have these stretch receptors in your lungs. There's some things that will stimulate calm in the inhale just because you're slowing down the inhale. Then you're holding, now in the 4-7-8, you're holding with pressure. That, whenever you increase intrathoracic pressure, there are some signals. There's some changes that happen during that time. And let's just say this, just to keep it simple for the sake of this talk today. What you're doing that for is to enhance the exhale. So you're prepping. So your inhale is nice and slow. Your hold with full lungs is prepping for the most powerful signal to your parasympathetic nervous system that you possibly can get using an extended exhale. So that's one of the reasons why it's so powerful. A full lung apnea, especially with pressure, we always want to do it with pressure with 4-7-8. And when I say that, of course, I'm saying it on the internet. So somebody out there is going to be like doing a Valsalva maneuver. It's not like we're doing that, okay? So we're not going, we're not bearing down, so to speak. We are filling our lungs as full as we can. We're expanding our ribs. We're holding with a closed glottis so that we have intrathoracic pressure. We're not bearing down. We're just hold, kind of having kind of like this, kind of a hold, right? And then by doing that, we're doing a few things to our respiratory system. But we're priming the system. We're actually adding a little stress so that exhale can even go lower. It can actually be a more effective exhale. And so what this tends to do is it tends to put a person in a stronger parasympathetic state than a sympathetic state. Instead of a balancing technique like box breathing, we start to see that it really leans into the parasympathetic nervous system because every part of that breathing technique is parasympathetic nervous system focused, or as parasympathetic nervous system focused as it can be, but really focusing on that exhale. Okay. Box breathing is not necessarily that way. Box breathing, for many people, they will feel calm. They may feel tired doing box breathing, but that's normally because they're so stressed out or they're used to being in this high sympathetic dominant state. And now they're feeling more calm and balanced. And that is like, oh man, I need some more coffee to feel normal, right? Okay. So I love questions like this. I love nerding out on these things. Again, in the language of breath certification, we really go over this in great detail. Like you create your own breathing techniques, you create your own breathing sessions. Because let me just say this, it's again, like I was talking about earlier with ethics, there's nobody that walked off of a mountain. I guess there are some people who claim to have walked off a mountain, getting it straight from the heavens or whatever. But nobody really actually walked off the mountain and said, therefore, it shall be 4-7-8. Or, what happened is people experimented. This is one of the things I think is even cooler than the guru claims. Think about this. People experimented with these things. What an amazing, awesome group. I wish I could meet these people. Hey, it's like, what have you been doing with your breathing? Okay, I've been experimenting with this. Oh, I've been experimenting with this. Have you ever noticed that? Think about the laboratory. I mean, that's what it is. And the beauty is you can do this too. This is not something that you have to get a book. You don't have to go to anybody else. You can experiment with all of this. Now, having said that, when you're experimenting on yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work that way for everybody else. So that's why it's great to have a community, right? And so you start saying, okay, here's another person. Why don't you try this? How does this affect you? What's going on? And then you start saying, well, this generally does this, and just this generally does that, right? And you start to explain what you think it's doing based off of the kind of language that you have available, right? So if you came from a really cosmic spiritual path, you probably would start explaining it in a cosmic spiritual way. It's moving this energy, it's changing this nadi, or this it's moving, you get the idea. Later on, we start bringing it to the scientific revolution happens, all these things, and we start describing it in a different way, right? We start describing, well, now we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. It's so funny. Galen of Pergamon? What was his name? This guy. There's this. What is his name? The sympathetic nervous system has actually had a name, sympathetic nervous system, for thousands of years. It's Galen of Pergamon. Oh man! All right. Well, I wanted to super nerd on you right there, but I can't remember exactly where I was going with that. Anyway, the point is, when it comes to these techniques, it's not like we did some kind of test on the human body and we said, okay, when the human body does this and when it does that, it's not like it's already programmed in here and then we're just finding the programs and stuff. Okay, this is what happens. What happens is we just experimented. We said, okay, let's see. Let's think, well, if I open my throat versus closing my throat, does that change something? Now, we can use science and say this is what's happening physiologically, but the only way we actually know why or what is happening, so I can talk about intrathoracic pressure, but I don't really, and I can say, hey, this is what the nervous system is doing, but if everybody is actually having this result, now I have to figure out why they're having that result. Okay, so hopefully I'm making that clear. I really do appreciate that question. Let's see. And that question again was from Joseph, and I appreciate that question. It's very cool, very interesting thing. And I would love, Joseph, if you would let me know, how did you come to this conclusion? Box breathing versus 4-7-8. One makes us more sleepy. One makes us more sort of balanced. That's generally most people's reaction. But is that what happens to you? And then my friends here that are with me live, have you tried experimenting? Let's just do, I think I'll just sit down and I'll do a few minutes of one, and then I'll wait a little bit, and then I'm going to do a few minutes of another. Let's see what happens. So I'd love to know more about that. Okay, so let's see. John was asking about healing last month, and then I just recently got another question. Let's see here. This is from Susanna. About healing, and let's see here. I'm not going to be able to read the actual question word for word, but basically what she was hearing about the power of healing that comes whenever we do breath holds, so long breath holds and all of these things. And she was talking about, she says a lot of claims online, and specifically, okay, so when you hold your breath, you release certain hormones. When you hold your breath, you release stem cells and a lot of these things. And she was just wondering, is this something that can be used with healing? And so here's the interesting thing. So if you've read, so I don't assume that anyone here has read my newest book, Becoming the Ethical Breathworker, yet. I'm going to give you time. Okay. I want you to get the book. There is a chapter in there where I talk about how I entered into the world of breathwork. This was before I had any certifications. This is back when I was just a practitioner of breath, and I was trying to use breathwork. And these claims of healing have been around for a long time. Now, the short answer is that, yes, you can absolutely increase your rate of healing using your breath. This is true, okay? Hey, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. But okay, so it is absolutely true that you can increase your rate of healing using your breath. 100% true. However, most of the claims that are out there, and these are the claims that I tested on myself, okay? These are the claims that I believed wholeheartedly because my heroes were telling me this, my gurus, my heroes, all the people I learned from early on in my life, even before I became an instructor or or a facilitator or, before I had kind of gone the path that I've gone, back when I was a practitioner of breath, just practitioner, which is, I say that like it's not a lot, but that's really awesome if you're a practitioner of breath. Okay. I just want you to know that is a fantastic title to have. But anyway, I was trying to do this. So I am very fortunate when it comes to this kind of research because I hurt myself all the time. And I get sick. I used to get sick a lot. I still get sick a lot. Well, like I said, I don't know if I get sick a lot. I used to get a lot more sick than I do now. And there's a lot of different reasons why. But one of them was that I worked in a university setting where there were college students sneezing and snotting and sharing their germs on me all the time. And I did that for 11 years, right? And so I was absolutely the thing that got me into breath work in the first place was the claims of faster healing, improved immune system, never get sick again, all those things. That's what got me into it. The claims that the human immune system you could ramp it up doing certain breathing techniques. And it just so happens that all of those breathing techniques that they were claiming had to do with superventilation and breath holds. Okay. And I was gung ho, right? And so many of you know I was a Wim Hof instructor for, I think it was 6 years. And I was one of the first people into that, right? So when it came to breath work, I was a first, early adopter, I guess is what they call me. And I was early adopter in Wim Hof method. And I was part of that. And I had it in my head, and I was told by many gurus and masters and leaders that if I were to do long breath holds, I could, I was going to be able to fix, torn ligaments and tendons, and I was going to be able to, all kinds of these things that sounded really great. And they would cite research. And the problem with a lot of the stuff that it's interesting because that really spiked back in the early 2010s, right? So like 2013 is when I first found out about it. I think 2012, 2013, I was really, really into it. Eventually in 2016, I was training with Wim Hof. I was trying to send healing energy using my breath and breath holds, literally as he was coaching me, like, oh, just do, I was doing all those things and I never healed anything. And you could say it was my fault. And that's what most gurus do. Most gurus say, well, you probably weren't doing it right. I was with the gurus. I was literally doing it. I was like, there's no other way. I did it every day for years. I was doing all these things. And so, then I started to learn a little bit more about what's going on. I started to learn about, okay, the science that they're citing, generally they're oversimplifying or they're citing it incorrectly, or they're saying, hey, you're releasing these hormones, which you are, but based off of the breath holds that you're doing, you're not really releasing so much that it's going to make any difference. Okay. Yes, you are. You're releasing EPO. You are releasing certain things, but there's certain things that it's like, okay, just because you're releasing that doesn't mean you're releasing it in the same amount that would be needed to make a meaningful change. Also, there is just a lot of mumbo jumbo of like sending healing energy. I was trying to send my healing energy with my breath hold, and I was trying to focus it, and all of those things that I really wanted to believe. James, the placebo effect, and we can't wait to share it. Crazy claims online, Jesse. Well, yeah, and I'm sorry, I was part of this craze, especially early on, because not only did I want to believe it, but I was like, okay, it's got to be true. They're citing science. And what I have found, especially in the last 5 or 10 years that I've been doing this professionally, but for sure in the last 6 years, is that people often will cite science and then they just either they've not actually read it, or they're just assuming nobody is going to read the science that they're citing. And if you actually read the science that they cite, it might say those words in there, but it also disproves the claims that the person's making. And I've seen this a lot. And I think they just assume that, hey, if I say a sciencey word or a few sciencey things and I cite some sources, nobody's going to read those sources. I can just cite them and I can say them in a sciencey way. And then somehow, I don't know, people, the thing is, it's like, what happens when people really follow you? What happens when people really try it and then they don't get the result that you're claiming in the viral video? And I was one of those people, and I took it all the way. I was 100%. I was face first, and I didn't stop. And I just assumed that I was doing it wrong for a long time. And eventually, after doing it literally in the presence of the gurus and literally eventually I was like, well, wait a minute, maybe I should take a look at some of this research for myself. And so when it comes to healing, let me tell you how to enhance your healing capacity. It's not in the breath holds. I wish it were, because those seem amazing, magical things, right? I tell you what it is. What you do is you get out of the way. You let your body do what your body knows how to do best, and that is heal. The thing is, the world of health and wellness makes a lot of money off of you believing that you can't do it on your own. Okay. And I make a living, right? So this is what I do for a living. My job is to help a person get out of their own way so that, first of all, they don't need me anymore, but most of all, so that they can get the healing that they need, that they already can give themselves. It's just that we need, first of all, to meet the person where they are. You need certain kind of scaffolding. You do need a certain training program, but it's not this magical miracle thing. And suddenly lately, there's been a big resurgence of this. And they're all like, you know what they don't want you to know? I see these, especially on Instagram lately, people are sending these to me. You know what they don't want you to know? They don't want you to know this, right? It's like, no, literally everything that you're talking about, we were talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And we sort of ran out of reasons to talk about it because just these miracle cures weren't happening. Or they would happen, but then they wouldn't, it would sort of happen and then not happen. Or it would be like sort of just basically at the same statistical rate of luck, right? And so the way to heal yourself, okay, and this is, again, this, in order to put it even in this 1 hour broadcast, the way to heal yourself is getting out of your own way, right? The way to heal yourself is to remember that the mechanism for healing is the thing that you want to turn on. It's not that you're deficient in some kind of a thing that doing something is going. You're just simply trying to activate the system that heals, right? Now, there's some things you can heal from, some things you cannot heal from, and that's a hard pill to swallow as well. So in the language of breath, what we do is we work with, first of all, interoception. Second of all, we work with learning about the real science of how conscious and unconscious processes work together and how you can interact with that part of yourself in a meaningful way so that you can activate that healing process. Okay. Now, that healing state is not always conducive with the rat race. And so what I mean by that is that the lives that we live in the modern world are not conducive to healing. And I hate it too, right? Because we fuel ourselves on caffeine because we constantly have to be on the go. So our whole society is built off of productivity and not healing. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories. I don't think it's really a conspiracy thing, but and there's so many people, oh, that's what they're trying to do to us. No, it's that the way that we as a species have progressed, it's all about productivity. It's all about competitiveness. Those are things that are ingrained in our DNA too, right? Status. We want That's not a new thing. It's just that now it's mechanized and it's put into a position where you can't escape it, right? There was a time not that long ago that you didn't know what was going on, even outside of your own hometown or village, right? And so the issue comes down to more than just what is the breathing technique that makes you heal. It's understanding that you need to stay in that state long enough for the healing to happen. Now, having said that, I think this is one of those areas where a person can be an unethical person unwittingly, right? And say, okay, you can heal from everything and there's nothing you can't heal from. There's things that will take us out, right? That's part of being a human being too, right? We have a limited number of days on this planet. But when it comes to something that can be healed, the way to heal it faster is to help yourself feel safe. Okay. And so this is where slow breathing, this is where interoception, this is where really getting into a regular practice, even before you feel like you need the healing to happen, that's going to help you. That's going to help you so much. And when you get into that kind of a practice, it's not the glitz and glamour. It's not this, I feel high on my own supply type thing. I will say this though, the long-term effects are amazing. Just the calm that you feel in everyday life, the calm that you feel just walking down the street, because you've put yourself in a place where you're practicing feeling safe. So the more you can practice feeling safe, the more you can practice being in the state where all those safety things happen, like sleep, like healing, like all those things. And so my best advice to you, and I appreciate this question because this is something that has been on my mind a lot lately, especially the past month, because so many of these Instagram reels have been sent to me that are like, they're back to this old, instant healing type of a thing. It's not a matter of you're deficient in a chemical that will somehow make everything better. It's a matter of there is no machine that can change itself like a human organism can, right? We're looking at it ourselves like we need to be fixed like a machine, but in reality, what we have to do is change our state. The human organism will change more than any other machine can, depending on what it believes its position is within that, is it safe? Is it not safe? So that's really the key to breath and healing. Am I telling the part of me that does the healing that it's safe enough to heal? I don't have to consciously be in charge of that. And it's our desire to consciously be in charge of that typically leads us down the wrong path. We have to learn how to trust the part of us that does that. And it's not the part of you that says, go here, do that. Me sending healing energy to a place in my body, I have no business doing that. This is all like conjecture. It's like, what do I even consciously understand about my cells? Why not leave it to the part of your body that is the cell, that is the part of you that's regenerating, that's doing it, right? And that's what we do in Language of Breath. That's the whole style of the whole philosophy of breath work that I didn't mean to invent, but it's like, I almost feel like it's stuff that's already been there. It's just, for some reason, breathwork turned into machine, do this, create this chemical, because somehow where that chemical is supposed to go and what it's supposed to do. It's like all the supplements we take, because we just assume if you have the presence of a substance, it somehow knows where it's supposed to go. Well, my conscious thinking mind is not in charge of that. I have to let the part of me that is in charge of that take over. And to do that, I need to let it feel safe enough to do so. That is the secret. It's not, I need to be in control consciously and put something in a place and do something and make this thing happen. there's this sort of fallacy that we think, okay, if I can just do that, then I'm taking control. You are just this unconscious part of you is just as much you as the conscious part of you. Oh my gosh, this hour just flew by. And guess what's about to happen? We're about to have the breath party on Zoom. So if you're not a part of the breath work or the breath club on Patreon, join right now and you can switch over. I'm going to be switching over to Zoom right now and we're going to do a breath session. So go to patreon.com/Midwestern Method and you can join us. I'm going to hop over to Zoom. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thanks for all these amazing questions. And thanks for all these comments. I didn't even get to all the comments today. So I sort of got into it. So anyway, thanks so much. And I will see everybody in the Breath Tribe in just a minute.